and welcome back to this Healthy Life podcast. I'm very excited for my guest today. I have Leanne Dunson joining us today, and she is a certified hormone coach, and she specializes in helping women with perimenopause and menopause. And she helps with balancing hormones and getting rid of that stubborn belly fat, and also microdosing GLP-1s, which is a very exciting buzzword these days, and it's so controversial. So I'm glad she's here to join us and kind of break down the facts, break down the difference between microdosing and full dosing and all the other amazing health benefits that you can get from using GLP-1. So Leanne, welcome. So excited to have you today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Yeah. So, the GLP-1 thing is such a funny thing because for the longest time, my doctors were encouraging me to try using it to try to help with like puffiness and hormone balancing. And I was just kept hearing all the scary like side effects and horror stories of it. But I think it wasn't until I started learning about the idea of microdosing and how you can just do a smaller dose that can really aid and benefit your body. And I've been using one for the past 6 months or so, and I'm just in awe of some of the benefits that I've experienced in my body and just with the puffiness and hormonal balance and all sorts of things. So super excited to dive into this topic and share with people that it's not so scary, especially if you do it right and you have the right guidance. So super excited for that.
Yeah, this is my favorite topic.
Awesome. So I'd love to start with a brief introduction about yourself and how you got into the space, working with hormones and working with GLP-1s, and a little bit of your background.
Yeah, well, I'm 50. I'm getting ready to be 55 next month. I almost want to go ahead and jump into I'm 55, but 54, mom of four. And obviously I, in the past, had gone through a lot of hormone issues and couldn't find the answers. And I went to doctor, couldn't find the answers. So that's what got me into becoming an integrative practitioner and then wanting to specialize in hormones because I wanted to learn how to read blood work because the doctors kept telling me everything looked normal, and they said, you look great, but I didn't feel great. So that's what led me into this and wanting to really learn all about everything I could about women's hormones and, all of the things that were happening to women that happens in perimenopause and the symptoms. And so I could allow other women to feel seen and heard because I didn't feel seen and heard for many, many times. I felt like I walked out of doctors after doctors being handed an antidepressant, which I was like, I don't think I'm depressed. So that's what led me into doing what I do now and helping other women that are in perimenopause and menopause, feel seen, heard, and get results and get the answers to get to the root cause. And yeah, just based upon, with mine. But one of the things talking about like how I got into with the microdosing GLP-1s is I, had so many women come into me, ask me what I thought about Ozempic. And to be honest, that was 2 years ago. I was like, no, and because all you're hearing is like what's going on in the media and you're hearing all this stuff. So what happened though, I know women and women were going to do it whether I said no or not. So I'm like, let's find a better way. And that's what got me into with the microdosing about 2 years ago.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I felt the same way. It was just like, I'm like, no, anything. There's got to be a natural way to do it. We don't need to take those medications. And it's like, until you kind of wrap your head around maybe how to use them differently or some of the other amazing health benefits that they have, I think it's hard for people to kind of accept that they could be a very useful tool. So I'd love to start with kind of just a breakdown of exactly kind of like, what is a GLP-1? Everyone knows it's like Ozempic or Mounjaro and, but they don't really know much more than that. They don't really know like what it's doing to your body. Like a lot of people just associate it with like weight loss, but let's start with just kind of breaking down what a GLP-1 is and what it does in your body.
Yes. So the difference is when people are hearing of Ozempic and those and Mounjaro and Zepbound, those are just brand names. So we have the compounding version, which is like semaglutide and tirzepatide, which are the most common. And so they started these medications back 20 years ago. These have been around for a long time, been studied and been used. And one of the things is that it was used for diabetics, and diabetics were taking them. And then all of a sudden they're seeing the weight loss. And then the media starts coming up and bringing about the weight loss factors. But the thing is, these biohackers have been using this for a long time for the other health benefits because it is a peptide. So it's a peptide. It's regenerative. It's healing. But the thing is, when it's like, Dr. Tina, who's, led the way for a lot of us to be able to talk about this so freely now, says it's the dose is the poison. And that's the thing. And that's what, I've seen. So it's because of, when you hear the brand names, those are pre-filled pens. So they're not able to be titrated. So it's like the same thing. So everyone gets the exact same dose, the exact same protocol. So it's not individually based. And so we all are so different metabolically. And so we need to have personalized dosages for that, because we are metabolically different.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, so what exactly does a GLP-1 do in our body? So it is a peptide, it can be regenerative. So what kind of mechanisms does it use in our body,
It's,
and
it's
what sorts of
made
things can it help?
Yeah, so it's made to, regulate for blood sugar, and also that it helps then with your hunger. So it's made to slow that process down. But like we said, there's a lot of other benefits with it. So with that, helping, obviously, when it was used before for people for like with the weight loss part of it, and reducing the hunger, taking away the food noise, which really, that's, as we can talk more about going into that, that's really what the key is we don't really want to reduce the hunger of the part. And that's where like the high doses of the GLP-1 does. We really want to be able to quiet sometimes the food noise that can really help women when it comes to that weight loss. And so with this, that goes into and what is going to the body, yes, it's going to reduce, it slows down the process of the food eliminating from your stomach, slows down that process. But in the meantime, too, when it's for people who are dealing with insulin resistance and that, and it's regulating the blood sugar, but it's not going to, it meets the body where it's at. So it's going to release more insulin when insulin is actually needed. Instead of people thinking like, oh, it's just going to drop my blood sugar. It's not. It meets the body where it's at as a peptide in those receptors.
Awesome. And then, so we've talked about, obviously some of the benefits that people know about are, helping with diabetes and insulin resistance and obviously weight loss. But what are some kind of more unknown benefits that people can experience from using GLP-1s?
Well, I have a lot of women in my PCOS is huge. I've seen huge differences in women that have come to me with PCOS. RA, we use a lot with RA. I have people IBS, colitis. When it comes down to all this, the root cause of most all of this is inflammation. And so we can reduce the inflammation, then we can go ahead and get a handle on all of these symptoms that people are having when it comes to like IBS is symptom based. I've seen with Hashimoto's reduction in TPO-AB numbers with Hashimoto's. It also has, with autoimmune, the list goes on down to, with people who have, tend to like my women that can't give up the wine at night, helping with that. So then they can, get healthy, and they can make different, choices and lifestyle habits too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really interesting. I feel like just in the short time that I've been on it, at a microdose, it just, your cravings for things completely changed. Like, I really have no desire to really drink alcohol. If I do, it doesn't even taste good, which like something has happened with like the taste of red wine. It tastes like sour. So it's like, you're just like, I don't even want it. I'll just have some sparkling water with some like citrus in it or something. And it really kind of just changes your mindset almost in a way too, that you don't even crave some of these things that may not be beneficial for your body.
Right. That's what I've noticed a lot, is a lot of my women, they've said to me, they're like, I've had food noise from the time I've been 13 years old. They said, I've always constantly thought about what I was going to eat the next day in the food from the time I went to bed. And so when they can free that up, they feel normal, like they're not constantly food, and that's been a huge one. And the other thing too is like addictions. Like I've noticed, and we use different, like there's things that we can use more. Semaglutide we would use more than we would tirzepatide for certain things that I found that works better. And one is like for addiction, down to even Amazon addiction, and trying to always kind of find that pleasure too. And with the wine and with food and all of that, with semaglutide knows made a really big difference with that with a lot of women.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's so crazy. I feel like we're just on the tip of the iceberg of all the benefits that we're going to be starting to see if people are using these properly. So, one thing I want to talk about is side effects. So, obviously, that's kind of what you obviously heard about in the media, right? It was like, don't do this, you'll get gastroparesis, or you might get thyroid cancer, and all these things that really don't happen that often. Haven't the thyroid cancer, I don't think has even happened in a human. So,
Mm-mm.
it's like, they're really scaring you with these symptoms that actually may not even be true. But even at a microdose, when you're first starting out, you can definitely experience some symptoms like constipation or fatigue. What are some things that people can do when they're just starting out and kind of getting accustomed to the peptide to kind of use that transition or ease those symptoms so that they stay with it and wait to see the benefits from it?
One of the things is you want to make sure that it's really good to have support when you're doing this, to have support. So you have someone who has experience with using this peptide, so they have tools in their toolbox. So when this does happen, most women, even not on a GLP-1, are dealing with constipation. So it's really important to make sure your pathways are open, while before and while you're on this. And so one of the things that I find is a lot of women, we tend to do, I have a really good protocol with using, we use magnesium glycinate, and then maybe we'll throw in one like oxy powder, something that keeps them very regular with that. Most people are magnesium deficient anyways, women come. So we just do something, we up it, we get them moving. And that really has been like amazing with all my clients. They just thrive. They're like, had come to me constipated, and now they're not even on GLP-1 and they're not constipated. I also think as it does, actually, it's adjusting the gut microbiome. I think too, sometimes it can actually really benefit women who were constipated before. I just think at the beginning, sometimes that's why people can feel a little bit off as that gut microbiome is actually adjusting with the GLP-1. That's where those women can feel a little bit, they might feel a little bit like with the nauseated. One thing that you can do is make sure on your injection day that you want to make sure that, I like to not do it first thing in the morning on an empty stomach. You want to have a good meal in, not just a protein shake. Like get a good meal in, get some protein, get hydrated. One of the things people always think they're hydrated because they're drinking lots of water, but I highly recommend like get a really good electrolyte in. You want one that, it has a good like sodium, potassium, and magnesium ratio is great. With that, getting in electrolytes, making sure you're hydrated, that really helps when it comes to some of the side effects, which could be from being nauseated, constipated, and headaches.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then so, you're working mostly with women that are using this in perimenopause and menopause, but is this something that people should maybe consider staying on for the rest of your life? Like that seems scary, I think, to people when they first started. They're like, well, I don't want to be on a medication forever. I don't know what the long-term effects are, right? But if it's something that helps kind of in this transition phase with our hormones, so what's kind of your vision on that? Do you think that this is something that people are going to benefit from long term and they're going to feel so good on it that they're not going to want to stop? Or is it something that's just during this kind of big hormonal shift that happens in our bodies?
I think it's very individually based upon the person, where they are. I think going on it and then kind of like listening to the biofeedback of your body. So let's say that they have results that they want to lose 10 pounds. They want to lose inflammation. They're having some insulin, resistance going on, and they get the results that they're looking for. They're feeling good. And then let's say that we start to titrate a little bit down and their body's responding really well, and they're still feeling amazing. Then maybe we can have a conversation of like, coming off of that. But if not, if their body's still kind of responding, then it's kind of like, take it a little bit slower. But for instance, like someone who has like PCOS, or if you have RA, or like with myself, is I have a family that has type 3 diabetes, dementia. So, and has, and then also like cholesterol and stuff like that. So that's why I use like, using it and cycling it, switching up from, each different peptide, playing around with that. But I think it needs to be as the individual. I don't think all people, once you can actually use GLP-1 as a tool. So use it as a tool. Let's get to maybe the root cause of why some of this was happening, but use it as a tool, get metabolically sound, making sure that you are getting the right amount of macronutrients, micronutrients in your diet. You're focusing on everything that's muscle sparing. So you're getting in your workouts, you're building muscle. You're making sure, working on your digestion, you're changing lifestyle habits, all those things, and using the GLP-1 as that tool, like that leg up, maybe that little leg up that, we all could use in, perimenopause,
Yeah,
menopause,
absolutely.
even younger, at times too. Nowadays women are going through hormonal stuff and other issues. We've got mold toxicity, we've got Lyme, we've got all the stuff that really can cause havoc on a woman's body anyways too. So using this as, a tool and seeing. So I think some people, yes, that they could really benefit on doing droplets of this. And, and some people might need a higher dose. That's the one thing with microdosing is everyone always reaches out to me like, what's the dose? Why are you telling us the dose? And I'm like, because it's not a specific dose. It's really individually based, because I have people who come on who are, they respond, on a very low, like extreme, like drops, they're responding. And other people aren't as metabolically sound and they need a little bit higher dose.
Yeah, that's how I kind of started. I just started very low and just titrated up till I found kind of the sweet spot where, it was kind of helping with inflammation. I wasn't so puffy and just, all the different benefits that I've experienced like that, and kind of just I'm staying there till I see I need to make a change.
Right. And the other way too is like, so if you have like your, let's say your provider gives you, a certain protocol, and you're feeling nauseated or you're having some of those issues, there's also things about splitting the dose.
Yep.
So you can do a split dose, and that way that I find a lot of people who are having those issues, it really makes a world of a difference. So you're still getting that same amount, per week, but you're splitting it up.
Absolutely. And so I want to talk a little bit about the fitness side of it too. There's so many things in the media like, oh, you're going to lose muscle if you're on Ozempic or tirzepatide. So, what's the truth behind that? Obviously, when you're on the peptides, you really want to prioritize protein, which we should be doing anyways when we're working out. So what's kind of some tips and tricks for people? What kind of workouts are really effective when you're on the peptide? And then how do you keep your muscles from wasting?
So I think that's the big myth of this. Actually, the GLP-1s are actually anabolic. So it actually pushes amino acids into the muscle. The reason why people are losing muscle because they're not eating. It's the same thing like if someone went on, a 900 calorie diet, they're going to lose muscle. So what happens is in these high doses that people are taking and they're just wanting that fast weight loss, they're going to lose muscle because they're not eating enough. And so the body is going to go ahead and use that muscle for energy. So that's the thing is that we have to look, it's not the peptide. It's what we're doing. It's the dosing of the peptide and us not eating what we're supposed to be eating, getting that right amount of protein, carbohydrates, and fat, that macro based and those micronutrients. That's really so important. I always recommend women like a minimum of 100 grams of protein. I mean, that's a minimum for me is the 100 grams of protein you need to be getting. And sometimes maybe when you're first starting the GLP-1 and you've noticed that there's a little bit like, hey, you know what, I'm not feeling as hungry. Maybe you need to set alarms on your phone to remind yourself. Or maybe it's someone that's come from, a lot of them have come from like extreme dieting. They've done intermittent fasting. So their hunger cues are already off as it is. You come on a GLP-1 and it's like definitely, quieted. And so they might need to actually reset and teach their body how it needs to eat again. And that's where still like, changing, that's where it's not just like using a GLP-1, it's also changing some of those factors that really weren't working for you and changing that. So I have my people like set an alarm because these are people that have been doing this for a long period of time. They just didn't come on a GLP-1 and start not eating, enough carb intake. So set the alarm and make sure like you're getting, 30 to 40 grams of protein, throughout the day, at least 3 times a day in the snack.
And so what are some kind of like quick, easy ways to get protein in? Because that can seem daunting to someone, right? Like 100 grams of protein, that's a lot. And unless you're used to eating like a high protein diet already, or like a more paleo or keto style, like that's going to be hard to kind of wrap your head around getting that much in. So what are some kind of easy ways people can integrate that?
So one of the great ways is what you're already actually doing. So let's say you have, just throw out there, chicken breast. You're having a chicken breast and you're like, maybe you're only getting 3 ounces of chicken. Well, just have 4 ounces. Extra ounce. So don't make it difficult where you're having to feel like you have to add more food. I think people get like, oh my gosh, I have to add so much more food. Just do what you're doing and add a little to it. Also really it's great. Like a lot of women love uh, oatmeal in the morning. Like everyone's a big, eat your oatmeal. And there you go. Take some liquid egg whites and throw a couple liquid egg whites and cook it in it. You won't even know it. It's so fluffy and it's great. And that way right there, you're getting 30 to 40 grams of protein in. I love using, if you want something that's quick, like beef protein isolate, I use that, throwing in with get maybe one smoothie in a day. But really, Greek yogurt's great, cottage cheese. I mean, everyone's using cottage cheese for everything. Throwing in that's going to give you a good 30 to 40 grams of protein in. But I really say focus on with what you're already doing and just add.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So
That makes it easier.
Yeah. And I mean, it's really easy to get an ounce instead of 3 ounces, 4 ounces, if you keep doing that throughout the day in all 3 meals, you've got your 100 grams of protein right there.
Yep, absolutely. And then as far as fitness goes, I think a lot of people that, have been struggling with weight issues, have tried every workout, tried every diet, didn't lose weight. They're finally losing weight on this. And then, on the other side of the spectrum, people that are using this for autoimmune conditions and like other conditions like that, maybe didn't have the energy to work out and maybe now they're feeling better. So what's kind of a good sweet spot for working out? Obviously strength training, I'm assuming is great because you're going to be building that muscle and you're eating that protein. What are workouts that are good and beneficial to kind of complement the benefits of the peptide versus workouts that maybe you're wasting your time doing in the meantime?
Yeah, because we don't want to do anything that's actually going to cause, cortisol issues and cause any more stress on the body. So I highly recommend doing some progressive overload workouts with strength training. You want to be able, and that would look like, I'm not really big on like, let's say all the Orange Theory and all the really, the HIIT type of workouts. You really want to focus on, really getting that strength training where the last 2 reps of whatever you're actually challenged on, that's where you really find that right weight for you. Doing that, making sure like find a plan. I always tell women like random workouts and equals random results. So find a plan, find something that you can, stick to. And every week, like a lot of women just want to keep doing different stuff all the time because we're just like, we need something different. We need something to be different in a different way. But I'm telling you where the results ends. I used to be a competition coach. So I used to help women transform their bodies to get on stage. And we would do the same workouts for like 8 weeks, 12 weeks. I mean, it was like daunting. I'm not making anyone do that, but at least 4 weeks, stick to the same thing. So whatever you do on Monday, if you do legs on Monday, do legs again on the next one, do that same program. And then also like try to challenge yourself. Those last 2 reps, challenge yourself, make sure that you're lifting a weight that's actually going to challenge you enough. And what's super important, what I see a lot of people do, they're going too fast through their workouts. So they're not spending time on really that mind and muscle connection. Like listen to a great podcast, turn on your podcast, listen to the podcast on there, go slow and in your movement, like have that connection with your body. A lot of we've become so disconnected with our bodies. Like we've got to become more connected with it. And so like that comes to even like listening to like your hunger cues, listening to like, turning on all of that, but also connected into when you're lifting, what you're lifting and why you're lifting like that muscle, learn about your body. But I think the biggest thing is definitely with that progressive overload. I think it's one thing that's really missed. And that's where women can get amazing results doing that.
Absolutely. And then, yeah, that's great advice because I think that's something that everyone kind of struggles with. And like you said, you kind of go from class to class so easy with like ClassPass, right? You're like, I'm gonna try this workout, this workout, and this one. And then before you know it, you don't even have kind of like a regular workout routine. And, I just started doing weight training, I think about 2 years ago now, and it's completely changed the composition of my body, my strength. I'm like stronger than I ever was, even though I don't feel like I'm doing that much when I'm there, because you're doing kind of like the heavier weights, right? So you're just like, and I went from doing like Soul Cycle to doing that. So it's like a very different kind of workout and experience, but I'm loving it. I'm loving how my body's feeling, and how I'm getting stronger. So definitely recommend that for people out there.
Oh yeah. Well, that, and the thing too is like taking the rest. I'll give someone a program and they're like, wait, you're telling me to rest 90 seconds in between?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, that means you know that you weren't lifting.
Yeah,
That rest at 90 seconds. You're like, please
yeah,
give me 90 seconds of rest. If you're doing
absolutely,
deadlifts or anything like that, you're like, I need those 90 seconds
absolutely,
to rest.
to
And
recover.
yeah, and it's great too, as our hormones are declining, like we're not as resilient as we were
Mm-hmm.
before. So we need that rest. We need that
Mm-hmm.
rest, and allow our body to come back and to be able to lift heavier again.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so, speaking of hormones, I want to dive into that a little bit. So, obviously through perimenopause, there's a lot of shifts in hormones, and then menopause also. So, like, things are definitely changing from where you were before to kind of, aging gracefully. So, what are some ways that the GLP-1s are helping balance hormones in this transition, if they are at all?
So the recent study that came back actually showed that it was helping optimize by 30%. So that was huge for me. And I heard that a couple of months ago. And I will tell you, I'm always like my own guinea pig. But because of being a practitioner, I can take lots of blood work. I can do blood work on myself. So I did blood work before, and then I did blood work recently. And so I was having time. I was on HRT. I take estradiol, I do testosterone, and I do progesterone. And I was having a really hard time no matter what. And I find this with a lot of women, getting that estradiol to that right number, that therapeutic number. And so really I was like struggling, like no matter what I did, we changed different modalities of like using different type of, HRT with estradiol, patch, gel, injection. It wasn't until actually using the GLP-1 that my estradiol numbers went to like perfect, to like where they looked at and they're like, I don't know what else to tell you to do. Like, and so that right there, and I've had client after client after client, the same exact thing, and witnessing. And I know there's not a lot out there that's showing that, so I can't like say, but there has been, studies, and then also in this, like there's a lot of us talking, we're in groups talking, and we're all seeing this in our programs. Between I have a telehealth provider in my program, and we're all saying like, this is what we're seeing. We're seeing women are finally actually seeing their hormones that are optimized. And
Wow,
we're
that's
seeing it with
amazing.
the blood work and based upon too what they're telling us.
Mm-hmm. What sort of average time frame are you seeing that shift in the hormones as well? Is it something that happens fairly quickly, or is it something that happens over course of a year or months, or what's kind of like the time frame for a lot of these women that they're having that optimization?
I've had women on it for 2 years. So I find that it's the sweet spot is usually around that 90-day period. Um, the sad part is a lot of people give up before the 90 days. I always tell women, like, you're one step. You were probably like a week away from like getting,
Oh,
what I mean? Like they're not,
yeah.
the society we live in a microwave society. We want everything, we're used to
Mm-hmm.
Amazon giving us all to it. We want that. We want that in our health. We want that in our bodies. We're like,
Mm-hmm.
and also too, we think like back when we were, we always go back to our 20s. In our 20s, we did
Mm-hmm.
one
Those
thing.
days are long gone.
Go for a run this week, and then you're like, woo, I'm ready to go to the beach. I'm like, bring my bikini, like all that. People, we still expect that now, but it's not
Yeah.
like that. But I would say like I find like the 90 days is when I start to see people. And some women, though, I'll tell you, are because they've been doing some things beforehand, the GLP-1s, and they get on the GLP-1 and then it just like boost it. And some people, like I have a woman right now who couldn't, we're doing an exit protocol, getting her, we titrated her, getting her down. She has like, her body has completely transformed because of she had so much inflammation, so much inflammatory weight. Most people that are holding on to that extra 10 pounds are like, I can't lose that extra 10 pounds. It's inflammatory weight. And so with that, with her, she was on hormones, but it wasn't until she did it, her hormones started optimizing. We started working on the insulin resistance. So everything she was doing, finally, she was seeing results with.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
amazing. And then you mentioned HRT. Is this something that could complement HRT, or do you find that maybe once you're using the GLP-1, there's not really a need for HRT because the GLP-1 is going to work on balancing everything?
I think it depends upon the age. I think it's definitely depends on the age. I can see women who I've worked with are younger, which I have two of my daughters are on GLP-1s. So I notice it's definitely different with age, but I definitely think that I think there needs to be, these are all like the non-negotiables, as Dr. Tina says, the non-negotiables. I really think that you need to be looking at the whole body. So I don't think we're just going to be relying on GLP-1. I don't think we can do monotherapy anymore at this stage. I think we need to have a bunch of tools in our toolkit and be using it all when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to strength training, when it comes to working with our hormones, when it comes to making lifestyle changes, focusing on our gut, focusing on, our mindset. Like all of the things need to come into play, just not using a GLP-1. And I think that's a mistake that a lot of people wait. They're like, I'm just going to take a GLP-1, and
I think it's going to fix everything.
But,
Yeah.
hormone, HRT, I call it replenish. So it's replenishing. It's, it's not replacing, it's replenishing our hormones. And so it's so beneficial. And it's preventative, it's protective, and it's being proactive.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up age. That was actually one of the questions I had as well. So, is it when you're going, you're going to be heading into perimenopause at a certain age in your life, or menopause, right? Is there a certain age that maybe you can kind of get ahead of some of the issues you're going to have by starting the GLP-1 sooner? You mentioned your daughters are starting on them. What's kind of a optimal age to start them instead of waiting till you've done a lot of imbalances in your body?
Well, I think a lot of times now, there's so many people that have been on birth control. So we're seeing things now that, it wasn't as common maybe back in I'll age myself, but it wasn't, as common back, like not everyone was on birth control as much now. And then now so many people are, and I think the light is going off. I think there's enough talk now that's being talked about birth control, because it automatically puts you in a state of menopause. You know what I mean? So people are coming off of birth control and are noticing that their body is not responding the same. They're noticing that they're insulin resistance. They're noticing whether they're estrogen dominant, all the little things that they're noticing because they are estrogen dominant when they are on birth control. So one of the things, so I think the age thing is, I don't think there's really any age limit. So I'll say that I had a conversation because someone asked me the other day, they said, hey, would you have put your teenage daughter on this? And so my daughter, my youngest, had a thyroid condition, and she developed nodules on her thyroid. We went through all this issue. She gained 25 pounds in 5 months from going from a slim girl and it was devastating, the things that she went through. And I said, if I would have known with this, yes, I would have put her on it, because the things that she went through and the years and years that we went through. And also I think about the reduction of inflammation when you have nodules, like all the things she was going through, I would have definitely have done it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just like I wish I could have given it to, I remember when my grandmother got diagnosed, when they're saying, your A1C is high and you need to maybe give up one, we're from the South, like we eat desserts after every meal. And she gave up her one, she gave her one dessert. But I remember so she went through being she wasn't overweight or anything. She was a healthy, vibrant woman. And then that to where it developed into type 3 diabetes and to dementia. So I don't think there's so no matter what the age, I think this fits in for so many people.
Conditions.
Conditions. It depends on where you're at. Are you dealing with, I know that I had PCOS at a young age and was never, ever diagnosed, going into all the cysts and having all the issues and the acne and everything, that this right here could have been a game changer.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hopefully we're kind of shifting our mindset on it and, moving forward, people can realize that this isn't just for weight loss. It isn't just for diabetes. It can help so many inflammatory conditions and balancing hormones and aging gracefully and, helping people feel good and be healthy.
Oh yeah. I'll tell you, I got a great testimony the other day. I have someone who has had colitis, and she has not been able to go to a restaurant or has not been able to travel. And she is now eating out at restaurants. She is now able to go to the gym because she's not scared about having to find the closest bathroom. She is enjoying life. And the one change, she was doing all the things, but the one thing that we did was, and we were able to stay extremely low with her. And she's like, I'm in this for life. Like, she's like, I
Wow,
don't want to stop this.
that's amazing.
Able to do all the things. She's traveling to Florida. She's doing this that she's
Hmm.
been able to do before. And I heard a colleague of mine saying, like, the GLP-1s now, like this microdosing part that we're talking about, learning the right way to do this is going to be like, in our generation now, is going to be like in the past generation of like antibiotics.
Yeah, it seems like this is going to be our new wonder drug that's going to help so many issues. And I feel like, in the past, antibiotics are more important, right? Because we were dealing with a lot of infectious
Right.
disease. A lot of those things have gotten a lot better. Now we're just dealing with a lot of inflammatory diseases that are plaguing pretty much everyone. I mean, everyone you talk to has some sort of inflammatory condition on, or if not, someone close to them does. So it's definitely like kind of the epidemic of our lifetime right now, and figuring out how to manage and deal with that. And there really isn't a good tool out there yet. So
Right.
it's very, very exciting that this has the potential to help so many people.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel very blessed. When I first started doing this and then coming out, even like talking about it on social media, there's a lot of, I mean, when I started talking, there was a lot of stigma. There wasn't a lot of people. There was like Dr. Tina talking about it, but I've been doing it for 2 years. I'm like, I'm just going to come out and say it. And like, and it's been sad. I mean, there's obviously like some people, like I have some like midlife, people that we all had like kind of a group, and you get kind of pushed away like, oh, it's like the easy way out and
Hmm.
the easy way to lose weight. And it's like, no, you're doing all the things.
Yeah. And a
And
lot of times people don't reach for these first, right? Like they've tried all
right,
the other things. They've tried all the crash dieting. They've
right,
tried all the different workouts, all the supplements, and nothing's working. So you almost get to this kind of desperate, frustrated state, which is putting your body into stress response and creating more inflammation and weight gain anyway. So it's like you're not going to get yourself out of that without some sort of tool or some sort of help on a cellular level that's going to help your body kind of make shifts within itself.
right. Well, and some of these people that are saying some of the things that they're saying about GLP-1s, they're on they're on hormones. And back in the day, like I've been doing hormones back from 10 years ago, I was called out saying, this is going to cause cancer and all this kind of stuff. Like the whole thing. Now we have a movie about menopause and everyone's talking about hormones and how amazing it is. And everything's been debunked. And I believe that's going to be the same thing exactly with GLP-1s. It's going to be all debunked. The more studies just don't happen overnight. They've been going on for years, and that's why then finally we get to hear them, 8 years, 20 years later, where get them and everyone's like, oh, okay, these are good now. But I think it's the same thing, but it's like people are looking at it with that stigma because of, the media saying, because of the people that were using it wrong. And there's always going to be something that can be wrong. It's like you can use too much vitamin C and you're going to be running to the bathroom. You can use too much vitamin D, all of that. So everything, when it's not done correctly, can have a side effect.
Absolutely. Or at the wrong dose, right? When you're
Exactly.
taking things way too high.
Exactly. Like that's the vitamin
Awesome.
C. Like someone takes too much vitamin C, they're running to the bathroom.
Yeah, exactly. That'll do it.
That's the same thing. So that's the same thing if you take too much GLP-1, So
Exactly.
the big thing is quit look, and people look for like the cheap way out, like something that's cheap, but they're not going to get support. They're just going to like med spas, like find someone who is educated, who knows, who has experience, and or find a provider that's actually knows about microdosing or is going to take that low and slow, that they're just not going to use the pamphlet that says, okay, we're going to start you here. And then in 4 weeks later, we're going to start you here. And then 4 weeks later, we're starting you there. Like find one that's going to listen to the biofeedback of your body. You want to find someone that's listening to how's your hunger? how's your sleep? How's your energy? How do you feel hormonally? Are listing those things. And if you plateau, instead of going, I need to go up on the dose, going, where did you inject last? Where's your injection site? How much did doing all those kind of things, like instead of just going, you need to go up.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, as we wrap up here, I'd love for you to share a little bit about how you work with people and your coaching program and some of the programs that you have available for people if they're ready to embark on their GLP-1 journey.
Yeah, so I have a program called SnatchBack Your Sexy, and we work on the whole body approach. So we're working on those non-negotiables along with using and microdosing the GLP-1. And so in that, I have an app in there too, where we do personalized nutrition, personalized workouts. You can choose home, gym. We're going to meet you where you're at. But it is going to be a progressive overload program in there. And then I have where people can do like weekly check-ins. And so you're really getting that feedback based upon every time when you're doing your injection, you're getting someone's feedback too, to see how are you feeling. Like I said, that biofeedback each week.
Awesome. And if people want to find you online and reach out to connect with you and work with you, how can they find you?
Okay, so I on Instagram at Leanne Dunson. So it's LEEANNE Dunson DUNSON.
Awesome. And I'll link to it in the show notes as well. Well, amazing. Thank you so much, Leanne. This has been so informative. I hope that this helps people that might be on the fence about GLP-1s or, just not be fully informed, that this can help give them another layer of information and maybe, experiment with it and see if it can be something beneficial for their bodies as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Like putting this out there. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's such important information. So
yes.
Happy to put this out. Amazing. Thank you.